Unmute. Is anybody there? Hello? Huh. Well, let's go again. Hello, is anybody there? Aiden, are you there? Let's see, admit. Hello? Hello? Aiden, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
I can't hear you. Hold on. Can you try that again?
Can you hear me now?
Nothing. Hold on. Okay, once more.
How about now?
I hear you now. Thank you. Okay. Did you try one link or two?
Just one.
Because I saw your email, but then I couldn't see you for a long time, so I reloaded stuff.
Oh.
Did it take a long time to load?
It said I was waiting for the host to start the meeting.
I had to start the meeting twice. I never saw the waiting room.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, whatever. All right. Well, did you take the exam?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you didn't have a problem. Let's look at the schedule and we'll talk about that and then we'll talk about other things. Okay. So we're done with exam 3. We've covered these organ systems and we went over that stuff because they were control systems, and then the circulation stuff has lots of big health implications. So now we're headed into a new section that deals with kind of like the future. And so we're going to talk about the reproductive system and how that works, and some health and social implications of that. And then we'll talk about inheritance, which is kind of, what you pass to your children. And we'll we'll talk about how that works and what you got from your parents. And then new developments in these areas are DNA technology. So we're kind of headed into a new section, kind of talking about the future and genetics and various things like that. So it's a little bit different. This first one we're talking about another organ system, but the other two sections we're not. We're just talking about kind of biology type stuff, and so it's a little bit different from what we've been doing. So we've got, again, 3 chapters that we're going to go over. In the reproductive system, in some ways, I spend a lot of time talking about the organ system in the lecture, but I don't talk much about some of the other issues which are presented in the chapter. So I'm going to go over that now in the Zoom part. So I have a couple sharing things to do. So first, let me just kind of highlight the reproductive system, and then I'll whoops, you can't see that. Let's stop the share. Okay. So we're headed into a new section. Okay, so let me see if I can, and now I'm going to share. This is the PowerPoint from the lecture. So let's get it up to here. You see the reproductive system with James Bond there, and I forget her name, but she's the vampire woman.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, so in the reproductive system, we're gonna focus on kind of the reproduction part of it. We're talking about an unusual form of cell division that your whole sexual reproduction means that we get new individuals that have genes from 2 other individuals. And so this involves a special kind of cell division called meiosis, where the number of chromosomes decreases, and then you get fertilization, where you get the chromosome number back, and you get new combinations of genes from 2 people. So all the things that we think of revolving around sex are all to put this genetic variation together. And then when we think about sex, we think about males having facial hair and being strong and muscular, but really for biology, it's all about producing these unusual cells that have half the number of chromosomes. So these are sperm and egg cells. In the male, it's the sperm cell. So this is where this unusual cell division takes place in the testes. And in the reproductive organs is also where you get the male hormone. And so everything else is just accessory structures for getting these cells together. So these glands, like the seminal vesicle and the prostate glands, they're just to help the sperm reach the female cell, which is the egg cell. And what we typically think of as the important male organ, the penis, is really just a delivery system. And so we go over that. I go over that kind of quickly. There's the picture of the penis that has to be in there. And then I talk about the control of the reproductive system. So it's really, this involves an area of the brain that produces what's called a releasing hormone. So it's gonadotropin releasing hormone. And that affects that pituitary gland that we talked about in the previous thing. And the pituitary gland produces 2 hormones that affect the testes. These are follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which in the male can get another name, interstitial cell stimulating hormone. And then the testes produces the sperm cell and testosterone. Okay, and so this provides a feedback system, because the brain kind of keeps track of how much testosterone is produced. And so the male sex characteristics that we think of, that are associated with testosterone, are just secondary effects that affects things like growth and body fat and hair and muscles, and everything else. But it's really the male cells are really in the testes. And so here's this kind of feedback loop involving those hormones. And so this is, as a biologist, this is what we're interested in. The hypothalamus, part of the brain, is controlling the pituitary gland, which secretes those two hormones, LH and FSH, which affect the testes. And then the testes produce testosterone, which is the signal that goes back to the brain. Okay. In the female, it's a similar story. You have the ovaries producing the sex cell, the ova or the egg, and then the two female hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Okay, and everything else is just accessory structures. The uterus, that's the site of fetal development, but then the cervix, the vagina, the vulva, these are to transport the cells, and then the result is a baby that has to pass out through the vagina, and then we refer to it as the birth canal. So there's the female structures nestled between the bladder and the colon. Okay, the ovary is inside the abdominal cavity. Here's a frontal view. That other view was a lateral view. Okay, and the sex cells make their way down from the ovary and they go into this uterine tube, and that's where fertilization occurs and development occurs in the wall of the uterus. Okay, here again, the control system is exactly the same. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary, which controls the organ, the ovary in this case. And so you get the same hormones, gonadotropin releasing hormone, FSH and LH, and then in the ovary, it's estrogen and progesterone. Okay, and so the female secondary traits include breast development, and so you also have prolactin that controls milk development, and oxytocin that causes its release. And women have, because they have estrogen and progesterone, they have different, those have different effects on the secondary kind of reproductive characteristics. Produces different patterns of hair growth and fat distribution, promotes growth, but not as much as testosterone. Okay, and here with the menstrual cycle, this gets a little more complicated because the uterus has to build up its lining each month in preparation for fertilization. Okay, whoops, let me see if I can go down here. Whoops, where did it go? Okay, and so the top shows the releases of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which occur from the pituitary. And then you have kind of down below that, you have different examples of what happens. And so as follicles develop into a mature egg cell, they increasingly produce more estrogen. After that's released by the ovary, that's ovulation, then estrogen decreases and you get more progesterone. Okay, and both hormones cause an increase in the lining of the uterus. Okay, if no fertilization occurs, decreasing levels of these hormones mean that the uterus sheds its lining. Okay, so then I talked a little bit about birth control in the program. Why we should think about it, because spacing out births and having fewer births is better for women's health. It's also better if a young child has mom to themselves for a longer period of time, so that children where their mothers can breastfeed for 2 years do better. If mom has lots of little kids, that means that the children are cut off sooner and get less attention. And so it's better for the infant's health and development as well. Okay, let me switch. I have another little PowerPoint that's short, but maybe better than this. Okay, so let me share another screen. Okay, so this one should be up here. Do you see the section on birth control?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a private joke between my wife and I, is that this guy has the perfect form of birth control. He's got big glasses, he's probably wearing a pocket protector over here, he's smoking, using the computer. No woman will ever have sex with him. That's my wife's thing. Oh, he's got birth control. But the objective of birth control is really to control the timing and spacing of births. Okay, and um, in thinking about it, we can think about what are the failure rates in real life? Is it what are the costs? Is it convenient? And how does it impact health? And so these are criteria that are commonly used. Um, and we define things into various methods. Some methods require minimal intervention. They're just changing behavior. This includes things like abstinence or the withdrawal method or the rhythm method or lactation methods. And so withdrawal means that the man removes the penis before he ejaculates. In the rhythm method or lactation method, a couple avoids intercourse during periods where a woman's fertile. And so they only have intercourse during non-fertile periods of the woman's cycle or when she's breastfeeding. Those things suppress ovulation. In the barrier methods, there's some physical thing that's either put on the man's penis or uh, in the woman's reproductive tract to prevent sperm and egg from reaching. For the male, this can be the condom. In the female, there's a cap or a sponge or a diaphragm that prevents access to the uterus. So the sperm are trapped in the vagina. There are sometimes they refer to these methods as hormonal or chemical. These methods usually manipulate that negative feedback system involving estrogen, progesterone, and then the hypothalamus and pituitary. Oral contraceptives, the patch, the implant, or the ring, these things, what they do is they have, usually it's synthetic progesterone. And so it inhibits ovulation by just kind of tweaking that negative feedback cycle. The morning after pill also inhibits ovulation, but it can also promote menses, which means the loss of the lining. And so this also prevents uh, um, pregnancy. And then there are surgical methods, vasectomy and tubal ligation. These methods, vasectomy is a cutting of a tube in the man's reproductive system, so sperm no longer makes it out of the penis. The tubal ligation is a surgery for the woman where the tube that connects the uterus to the ovary is cut and tied. And then abortion can be surgical methods where the implanted fertilized egg or young embryo is removed. Okay. Kind of where I wanted to talk about this was that there's typical use and perfect use. And so for these methods, I kind of apologize for this, this, this chart because it's really not organized. But what I'd like you to look at is the hormonal methods have very high rates of success. And so if a fertilized woman, or not a fertilized, a fertile woman has intercourse with a fertile man in their reproductive years, about more than 80% of the time she'll become pregnant in that year, in a year of unprotected intercourse. In things like the withdrawal method or the fertility awareness methods, that reduces the chances of pregnancy. But you still wind up with typically 20% of people get pregnant or women get pregnant in a year. And so has a pretty high failure rate. But when you look at things like hormonal methods like the patch or the Depo-Provera or hormonal IUDs, the failure rates are less than 1%. Pill combinations, those are effective. Another thing I want to talk about with birth control is, this is about preventing pregnancy, but we should also talk about sexually transmitted infections. These are infections that happen when there's genital to genital contact or genital fluid to genital contact. So the mucous membranes of the reproductive tract come in contact with either the partner's membranes or their body fluids. And these can transmit a wide variety of infections. There are bacterial infections like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. These bacterial infections are severe and can be fatal if left untreated. And even for the more mild ones, they can cause infertility and pelvic inflammatory disease. But in general, bacterial infections can be treated with antibiotics if the partners go to see their physician. There are also viral infections like human immunodeficiency or HIV, human papillomavirus or genital warts, herpes virus, hepatitis B viruses, and these are fairly common and they're very difficult or impossible to treat and impossible to cure. And for all these, there's a lot of difficulty because control of these is complicated by social factors. People don't want to talk about this. They don't want to tell their partners. They don't want to tell the doctor that there are partners. It's embarrassing. They're afraid of other people's judgments. Some of these we can prevent. Some of these we can control. And some of these are treatable, but some are not treatable. And for some of them, we have very few control methods other than barrier contraceptives, condoms. Barrier contraceptives are fairly effective if they're used correctly and reliably at preventing transmission of a wide variety of sexually transmitted diseases. There are others that I didn't mention, but those are the main ones. Okay. Let me end this. Did you have any questions?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Okay, so with there are some questions on the quiz on birth control methods. There's not much on sexually transmitted infections, but it's important to be aware of these, that these can be transmitted in your first sexual experience, and that it's also important to be aware that partners have difficulty talking about this, that the judgment makes it very difficult for partners to communicate with each other. I've had some discomfort, maybe you should get checked, I'm going to see my doctor. And that some of the most common of these infections are serious and have very few symptoms initially. So like the forum this week is on human papillomavirus. Okay, about a third of sexually active adults carry human papillomavirus. Okay, most of those people will have no symptoms. Okay, but some strains of human papillomavirus, some of the strains that are strains that cause cervical cancer and other types of cancer. Okay, and once a person's infected with those strains, there's really nothing we can do other than watch and try and catch cancer if it comes early. So it's very, very serious. And it's the same thing with chlamydia. Chlamydia is extremely common. A third of sexually active adults will have it, a third or more, maybe it's close to half. And it has few symptoms, but it can cause pelvic inflammatory disease, which causes infertility. It's treatable, but most people have only minor discomfort for a short period of time, and then the symptoms are so mild that they basically ignore them. And so very, very serious. With human papillomavirus, we have a tool. We have an important tool, vaccination, that if we vaccinate children before they're active, we can prevent them from becoming infected with that strain. And so prevent cervical cancer, which is really important because most cancers affect adults in their 50s or 60s. But cervical cancer is not like that. It affects young women in their childbearing years. And so something like 6,000 or 7,000 women a year die of cervical cancer, and they're in their 20s and 30s. They're not 60 or 70. And they die young. They often you know, they leave motherless children. So very, very serious. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So look over that stuff. There's a forum and a quiz this week. Next week it's genetics, and then we talk about DNA stuff. So we'll kind of, it's all related to passing on and passing on genes and traits and things like that. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll see you next week. Hopefully, I will try and get the exams corrected later this week. I turned in midterm grades last week. I don't know if they were available, but I think you should have seen them by now. I don't put any curve on midterm grades. I curved the finals, so I'm, you know, if you were on a borderline between a B and a C or an A and a B, I gave you the lower grade. Okay, and so there's more than half of the grade that remains, and so I don't want to tell you you're doing really well yet, because there's a long time yet to go. And if you didn't get a grade that you want, there's plenty of time to raise your grade. So, okay. All right. I will see you next week, hopefully, and so long.